Now let's get down to business. Joe Biden, how much longer can he go on like this? I mean, just have a look at his attempt to pander to the LGBTQXYZ plus minus multiplication sign constituent Americans this week.
I'm also proud to have signed an executive order on my first day in office to combat discrimination against LGBTQI, plus Americans.
Was it just me, or did you get the sense the president thought he was taking an eye test there? Anyway, it's getting so bad that even the Democrats, in the face of cratering poll numbers and a devastated American economy, are wondering what they can do about this guy. This week, consumer confidence in the U.S. crashed to a record low, driven by high inflation and shortages, while the latest Civics poll numbers showed Biden with a record low approval rate of just 33%, with his numbers underwater in 48 of the 50 states. So no wonder there are cracks beginning to appear in the Democrat edifice as the nation hurtles to the November midterms, and with potential distractions ranging from monkeypox to Ukraine, not enough to change the narrative. Now, I want to point you to a curious story that appeared in the Atlantic Monthly in the midst of all of this. The Atlantic is a magazine that every good-thinking lefty intellectual used to leave on his coffee table so that visitors to the House knew they were up to date on the current lefty talking points. Of course, these days, Atlantic readers are still too scared of COVID to let anyone into the House, and they get their content online. But the magazine's influence remains. The piece was entitled, "Why Biden Shouldn't Run for Re-Election in 2024, and it was written by consummate Washington operator Mark Leibovich. And the piece purported to make the case that Biden should go after one term, even if he is perfectly fit and capable to run the country into the ground for now. Wrote the author. But here's another recurring theme I keep hearing, notably from people predisposed to liking the president. He just seems old, one senior administration official told me at a social function weeks ago. Leibovich's report comes on the heels of another story in the New York Times, which, as we've discussed before, is a bit like the old Soviet Pravda. You know, normally you have to figure out what's really going on by seeing what's not being talked about. But this New York Times report actually came out and said Democrats were really hoping that Joe Biden would hang it up in 2024. Now, none of this, my friends, is happening by accident. No, no, no. Democrat mandarins clearly know that Biden is leading them and their party to disaster, and their only hope is to get the word out that Biden won't be around for long. And there are even whispers I'm hearing of an exit strategy for before 2024, which might start to become shouts if someone figures out how to solve the Kamala Harris problem. You only have to watch Joe Biden's bizarre, ranting, unhinged performance speaking to union members this week to understand why Democrats are worried.
I don't want to hear any more of these lies about reckless spending. We're changing people's lives. It's going to take time, but let the world coordinate the largest release, what I've been able to do, the largest release of oil from the global fund in history. 1 million barrels a day. Look, I believe in bipartisanship, but I have no illusions about this Republican Party, the MAGA Party. I've been able to bring some Republicans along on parts of my plan, but the fact is Republicans in Congress are still in the grip of the ultra-MAGA agenda.
Global fund? Ultra-MAGA agenda? Okay, Mr. President, there's some ice cream over here for you, but if you thought that was bizarre, get a load of new White House flag carrying Jean-Pierre, who makes her predecessor, old circle-back Jen Psaki, look like the greatest communicator since Margaret Thatcher.
We have to remember where this country was more than a year ago when he walked into office. The economy was not in a great place. Schools were closed. Businesses were closed. We didn't have a comprehensive COVID strategy. And what he ended up doing was meet that moment, pass the American Rescue Plan. Only Democrats passed that plan. He signed it. It was his plan.
I think that's what our friend Paul Murray calls the Jedi mind trick. Just forget what the economy was like when Donald Trump was in power and imagine that this is just fantastic. I mean, never mind that in the terrible economy Jean-Pierre claimed Biden inherited from Trump, the stock market was higher, inflation was just 1.4%, basic necessities like baby formula were still on the shelves, and it cost less than half as much as it does now to fill your tank. But according to the official White House narrative, it seems Americans just aren't grateful enough for the genius of Joe Biden, who, despite their lion eyes, brought the economy roaring back. Of course, well, that's the official line. What's happening in the vape-filled rooms of the Democratic Party where the decisions are made? Something else may be happening. Watch this space, no matter what letter of the alphabet you identify with. Because what I've seen is the Biden administration demanding that the fuel companies, the energy companies, make more energy now, at the same time saying, we're going to shut you down in 5 or 10 years. Why would any energy executive rationally agree to this sort of deal? And what is the lesson for Australia, where here in Sydney, the most populous city in the country, we were told to turn off our dishwashers the other night?
Well, I think we're all experiencing it, including I've been looking at some of the news out of Australia, and those kinds of things should be ominous. We should consider it embarrassing that we're worried about blackouts in the modern world. We have no inability to produce electricity. We know how to produce fossil fuels. There's no shortage of them in the earth. We've got plenty for generations to come. And so it's all about policy. So when we see things like our gasoline prices are skyrocketing, our electricity is becoming less reliable, we're being warned about don't use your power at a given time of day, we have to understand this is all policy. So I think in the US, what's happening is people are waking up. They know that Biden ran on, I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel. And now he's begging Venezuela for fossil fuels, begging Saudi Arabia for fossil fuels, demanding that the industry produce more fossil fuels when he promised to punish them for that. He's passing new SEC regulations telling them not to produce more fossil fuels. So Americans are waking up, which is making his popularity go down. And so instead of reversing course, which he needs to do in a fundamental way, he's just blaming everyone else but himself and his movement. But I think that people are seeing through this, and I'm very excited that at least this crisis is leading to a wake-up call in the U.S., and it better lead to one in Australia, because you guys have no nuclear and have an insane policy right now.
But just at that moment, the light fell. We had lights, and it fell on his the young man that was with him.
Constant companion.
Great, yes, his constant companion, flatmate. It fell on his head. It was this, oh, Christ!
Serious stuff. And hang on, guys, it gets even worse. What about this horrible, drunken lout and his appalling sexism and misogyny?
How much of that description that I gave there, which is from the National Times, is true? I take it swears like a trooper? Oh, yeah? This one I'm not quite sure about. Performs like a playboy? I have my moments.